Okay, it gives me great pleasure to introduce somebody that doesn't need any introduction. The Queen of High Energy, the original Queen, the fabulous Hazell Dean. So thanks so much for joining us tonight, Hazell.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Lovely to be with you.
Oh, we're really, really pleased now. I'm sure many of you have heard Hazell has been on the station before in helping, little clips with virtual pride and stuff, and is well known in the community. Massive supporter of Trans Radio UK, as well as a patron for Pride in Surrey. We're absolutely delighted just to have you here for an hour to have a chat about, your life and music and stuff like that. So tell us, how did you get in? When did you realise that you was a fabulous singer?
Well, originally, it was probably back in my school days, because when I was at school, I always was very interested in pop music, and I'm going back to the 60s now. I loved it. I loved everything that was going on, and when I was at school, we had a music teacher called Mrs. Eskews, and she started to teach after school guitar lessons, and I went along to these guitar lessons along with a load of masses of kids turned up with their little guitars, but after a few weeks it all sort of whittled down, and there was probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 of us left, and I realised I actually had a good sense of rhythm, natural rhythm, and so I started to learn to play the guitar. And then and we were talking when I was a teenager, and then I joined the school band basically, and so that's kind of sort of where it sort of started. Although I always had this thing that I loved pop music, so as I say, when I heard there were these guitar lessons, I thought, oh, fantastic,
Okay, so did the school band have a name?
Yeah, it's a strange name. That makes me laugh. We were called the Vandals.
The Vandals, right? Okay.
And we were anything but,
And what kind of stuff did you do with the Vandals?
Oh, well, we did a lot of sort of soul music, but obviously a lot of chart stuff. But we did a lot of sort of things like Otis Redding and Gino Washington, and the Ram Jam Band were very big back in those days. So we did do a lot of old soul stuff and some Beatles things, and at that point I was still more just playing guitar. So I was the rhythm guitarist.
Okay.
And also I would sing a few harmonies and stuff like that. So that's where I was with the school band.
Right. Okay. And what would you have been listening to at home? What would be, the music that a teenage Hazell was listening to?
Back in the day, I loved the Beatles, and I still love the Beatles. I'm a huge Beatles fan. And people like Cilla Black. Okay. I was a big Cilla Black fan. And Dusty, of course. And then I got into a little bit further. Tamla Motown suddenly appeared on the scene, and that was it for me. I was totally hooked on that. Diana Ross, Supremes, the Four Tops, all that kind of stuff. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So they were my 60s. But I used to love a lot of the bands back in those days. The Hermans and the Hermits, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Because you actually saw the Beatles, didn't you?
I did see the Beatles, yeah. When they first sort of went out on the road, and I was in Great Yarmouth on holiday with my brother and sister and my mum and dad, and they were actually doing a concert at the theatre there, and we went along to see them, and we had seats upstairs right up in the gods, and well, to be honest, you could hardly hear them because the screaming was unbelievable, and I've never heard anything like it since, to be honest, but it was just so exciting to see the Beatles, I have to say.
Oh, so, wow. Yeah, and the thing is,
very happy about that.
To see them in Great Yarmouth, you'd kind of think now that, the big pop stars of today, would they go and play at Great Yarmouth? No disrespect to Great Yarmouth, of course, but...
Well, they might do.
Yeah,
But it'll probably be more sort of like festivals and stuff these days.
Yes. Yeah, I suppose I think you've got the big one over sort of Essex way as well, haven't you?
That's right. Well, they're everywhere now. My whole summer is usually taken up with doing festivals and prides and stuff. So, yeah. So there you go. I did see the Beatles back in the day.
Oh, well. So you're in a band, and you said you were playing the guitar, doing a bit of singing. So how did you sort of,
After I was still at school. Further down the line, I joined another band, but this time it was a band with sort of older musicians, and they would sort of do a lot of sort of jazz, sort of old standards, jazzy type stuff, swing stuff. It was like a little small dance band, again in my local area, and I think it was there where I first started to sing, and when I always remember and it was still in the 60s, one of the first pop songs I ever sang was a song by Lulu, and I like Lulu. It was called.
Wasn't Shout.
No, it wasn't Shout. It was. It's one with a boat in the title, and I had it in my head, and it's gone now. It'll come back to me. But anyway, it was a Lulu song. The boat that I row won't cross no ocean. I knew I'd get there eventually. And
there we go. Got you singing as well.
Yeah, you did. And that was kind of one of the first songs I sang. And then I kind of got into singing some of the old standards, like Blue Moon, you saw me standing alone. Old jazzy songs.
Yeah. Man City fans would love that one.
They were the first sort of songs that I started to sing. And then eventually I kind of, and in many ways I wish I hadn't so much, but I kind of did drop the guitar a bit, and I started being more front of stage and singing. And so I did that in that little band in Chelmsford in Essex, and we used to go to lots of little places in and around all the little villages and things at the local, the hop and all that kind of stuff. And Chelmsford, we did a few things in places in Chelmsford and different clubs, but it was all in and around the Essex area. So and then when I left school, and I did actually have a day job, but I carried on with the band.
Right. Okay.
But I also, at that point in time, when I realised I could sing, and I was actually probably in my last year of school when I did this, but I actually started taking singing lessons.
Right. Okay.
I used to travel into London, and I used to go to the Maurice Burnham School of Singing, and that's where I sort of learnt breath control and all that kind of stuff. So so those were my very early days.
And then how did it progress to because when
I was at my school of singing, the Maurice Burnham School of Singing, my one of the things they sort of offer, and by the time I'd finished there, I was, as I say, I'd left school and I was working, and one of the things they did was they help you they try and help you get your first professional job, which, when you think about it, it's a fantastic thing. Whether that happens now, I don't know. But so I auditioned for a few things, and I auditioned with a band who were based up in Stoke-on-Trent, and the band were called, as a chap called Jimmy Goff, and the band was called the Jimmy Goff Arrangement. And it was at back in those days, there used to be Mecca dance halls, and we're now in the 70s, by the way.
Right, okay, yep.
In fact, it was 1970. And I got this job, and so off I packed my little bags and I left home. And I took on this job with the Jimmy Goff Arrangement at a place called the Crystal Ballroom it was actually Newcastle Underline, but it's sort of in the Stoke-on-Trent area.
Wow, so that must have been a massive move.
Oh, it was. It was. Yeah, and I'm singing and working sort of, I think 5 or 6 nights a week. So it was, it was like, it was hard. I was like just sleeping till very late, all sorts of things, and just getting used to it really, and singing sort of every night of the week, and yeah. But again, it was a band that would do cover versions, and so we covered everything that was around and about in the charts at the time. Right. Okay. Yep. So you'd have done that's how I got into all sorts of genres. Yeah, that was my first step onto the ladder of being a professional singer. Right. Okay. And then the first song now let's talk about the 70s, because we're still in the 70s. So what happened? From I worked Newcastle in a few various different bands in the 70s. doing sort of residential sort of things, because the Mecca ballrooms in those days, they were all over the country.
Yeah, I bet that was massive.
And pubs and all that kind of, so easy to get live work, which is obviously very different to what it's like now. Big bands and everything. So it was a great learning time in my life, learning my trade, if you like.
Any particular venues or nights from these early days that sort of stick out for for whatever reason?
I'm trying to think. Probably the best thing after that, I did. The biggest move I made, I worked a few bands at different places up in the north. So I went to Leicester and various places working with bands. But eventually, I wanted to get back into London. So my first thing in London, I came down to, well, it wasn't actually in London, it was Stevenage. It was called the Stevenage Locarno. I had a job, and this was with a big band with brass section and all that. So it was getting bigger.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so, I worked there for a while. And then we moved and we went into Streatham, and the place we worked was called the Cat's Whiskers in Streatham.
Wow. Okay, I've worked there.
Yeah, I loved that gig. I made so many friends. I lived there, and and all that kind of stuff. I made great friends. I stayed there for quite some time, to be honest, because it was so nice. And again, as I say, it was the same band, and so I did that for a while, and then after a few years, I kind of thinking, well, I've been doing this kind of stuff for a while now, so I decided I should move on from here and be with a band that maybe moved around a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
rather than doing a residency, a different kind of band that was sort of doing gigs in different places.
Yeah, rather than the same place.
Yeah, then I joined a band that was called Union Express, and it was fronted by a chap called Paul Curtis. Now, Paul Curtis in the 70s, he was actually, and is, well, I don't know if he still is, but he was a great songwriter. And
he used to do a lot of contest songs as well, didn't he? I believe.
Yes, he used to. I was just coming to that. He used to do a lot of songs, Eurovision songs, and that was his big thing. And so I joined the band, and we went to Spain, and we came back and we did the cabaret circuit, and all the working men's clubs up in the north. And that was that was quite an experience.
Right, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, certainly hardened you.
It does harden you, and we did like the working men's clubs, and that I have to say it was quite an experience. Strange things, but I always remember we were up in Scunthorpe or somewhere like that, and we were staying in this like an it was a holiday camp, but it was in the winter, and we were doing a working men's club up the road. Oh God, it was awful, And I became very ill, actually. I did come home, and I went back to Essex, and I'd got like bronchitis or something like that. I was not well at all, and there'd be some weeks where you might you never really earn an awful lot of money, and there are some weeks you'd sort of, I don't know, earn £8 or something crazy like that. It went up and down, just depending on what was, the amount of shows you had. So it was hard, and I couldn't drive at the time, and I always had to travel in the Ford Transit van with the band.
Right, yeah, the glamour.
That was quite an experience, and I'll be honest with you, I thought I will never do this again. And that's what pushed me to learn to drive, to be honest.
Right, yeah.
I really do need to learn to drive. This is not good. But anyway, it all sort of fell apart, and I came home, and I did start working in bands again, big bands. and I joined in '75. I went for an audition with the Andy Ross band at the Lyceum in London, and so that's where I sort of stayed there as well. Again, it was a bit like the Cat's Whiskers. The people were lovely. I had a great time, so I stuck with that for a while. And then Paul Curtis, he always did like my voice. Paul, as I said, Paul was a songwriter, so he used to come down to the Lyceum to see me. The Lyceum on a Saturday night was great in those days because it was called the Big Al, and it was called the best disco in town. And it was packed every week.
Oh yeah, that's when
it was good. And
people used to go out then, didn't they?
Yeah. Oh God, it was fantastic, and I did love it. And again, it was a great learning thing for me there because Andy, who runs the band, he's really into vocals. So every week, all the singers, about 5 singers, and we used to meet up and we used to sort of do lots of harmonies and all that kind of stuff. So again, it was a great learning platform for me. It was fantastic. But Paul Curtis would come in to see me, and Paul was always demoing and doing, writing songs. And he asked me if I would sort of do demos for him. That got me into a recording studio. So, these things, you see how it's going. Yeah.
One thing leads on to another, doesn't it?
Yeah, it did. They were great times. And again, Paul was amazing with vocals. So again, I've learned so much with Paul. And but Paul and I went on to do. He actually got me a deal with Decca Records, and this is where I first started making records. And we're now talking 1976, around that period of time.
Okay, yeah.
And we recorded some songs, and in those days it was with a live orchestra, so it was fantastic. And my first single I ever had out was a track called Our Day Will Come, and that was in 1975, and it was very sort of Gloria. It had that Gloria Gaynor sort of feel to it because that sort of disco thing was really big then.
Yeah.
And that kind of sound. So live strings, all that kind of fantastic. So, but also he.
So what was that like having your first record come out?
Well, sitting in the studio with a live orchestra, it was just amazing.
God, I can imagine.
It sounded stunning. I mean, it was just very exciting. And we also recorded a big ballad called "I Couldn't Live Without You" for a day.
Yep.
And we entered that for Song for Europe for 1976.
Right. Okay. Yep.
And we got into the last 8 of the Song for Europe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Again,
I bet that was another experience because.
Well, it was because in those days it was a lot grander, if you like. It was done at the Royal Albert Hall with a live orchestra, huge, great orchestra, with this beautiful ballad with strings and all that kind of stuff. It was fantastic. And the other thing was, it was my first ever live TV, so that was quite daunting at the time.
And only at the Albert Hall, and that used to be
only at the Albert Hall, yeah.
Live at the Albert Hall,
yeah. But it all worked out. It was fabulous. You can see this. It is on. It's still on YouTube.
Oh, right, okay, so, fabulous.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance to have a look, it was a fantastic song.
Oh,
so there you are. See, it snowballed now into sort of doing my first TV. So
live TV of it. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like having to sing not only in front of a packed Royal Albert Hall, but also God knows how
it's
many.
It's really weird because there's I at the time and still I still. When I've looked back at the performance, but I was just so nervous. I can't actually. You almost can't remember doing it.
Right. So, yeah. No, I get that.
Concept. But anyway, I did fine, and my voice was sounded great actually.
What an amazing
so there you go. They're my sort of early 70s.
Back then, there was only 3 channels on the telly, so it would have been watched by millions and millions of people.
It was, it was great. Yeah, it was lovely. So so that's how I got to record, basically.
Right, yeah, and so that's that. So now, moving on from your 70s stuff, because you had your first album, The Sound of Bacharach, is that right?
Well, Yeah, there's another little story to that. It was never that album was never out on general release. It
Right.
was something I did for the BBC back in the 70s. I did that with Paul because Paul knew lots of people at that time, and they wanted someone to do a Bacharach album. And what it was library music for the BBC, and it's the sort of thing they would use on a late night show.
Right. Yep.
So, but the thing about those tracks is I never, because I'm a huge Bacharach and David fan, always have been. So I thought, oh, it's a chance for me to sing those fabulous songs. But I was never, I had to sing them very straight. I couldn't do my own interpretation of them.
Right. Gotcha. Yes.
So when I listen to it now, I go, oh, because I mean, number one, I really sound very young on them, and I have to sing them very straight. So,
Right, yeah.
So yeah, as much as it was lovely, there's parts of me think, I wish I could have sung it how. Not that I would have gone crazy, but I would have sung it differently.
Yeah, put your own spin on it. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Put your stamp on it.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I say, that was never out in sort of public domain, as they say.
Right. Okay.
But I think fans got wind of it and have always, we'd like to hear that. We'd like to have a copy of that. So Cherry Pop did put it out for me. So all my sort of fans got what they wanted. And it's nice, actually, because there's a really nice booklet with it as well, with lots of pictures inside and little stories. So that's quite interesting.
Right. And can they still get that now? Is it still?
I don't know.
Oh, it'll be there somewhere. We'll have to have a look.
Yeah, I do.
That'd be really good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
So that's kind of the sort of the late 70s, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
For you, so sort of moving on to the 80s, which was massive for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, the 80s. I think most people you speak to like my daughter and say, what decade would you like to go back to? And whereas sort of my generation would probably say the 60s, they're now all saying the 80s, the 80s.
I know.
So yeah, the 80s
for me though, isn't it? Yeah. Oh dear.
Talk to us about the 80s.
Yes, after I'd sort of the late 70s, I actually did go back into singing with bands again, because after that whole situation, I did do a fantastic tour in the 70s, which was in 1977. I toured with the New Seekers. I was the first act on.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, it was a theatre tour, and I had a manager.
Around the UK?
Yeah, well, I loved it. Scotland, UK, and but it was the first time that I truly went out as Hazell Dean. I had my own band, but I was the singer, so it was Hazell Dean and and a backing band type thing, and so that again, that was a great learning thing for me. So
and must have been to have that to come from singing in or playing the guitar in the school band to now
exactly.
It's you're the headline, which must have been totally amazing, to be fair.
No, it was fantastic. Again, after a couple of shows, I just took to it quite easy. I loved it. It was fantastic. So we did that, and I had a single out at the time. It was my last single that I recorded for Decca Records. It was called Look What I Found at the End of a Rainbow. Again, it was a Paul Curtis song. But Decca Records had their heyday in the 60s. They had Tom Jones, they had so many big artists. So the 70s, they were struggling. So that kind of, we left the label. And then after that, I went back to singing with bands again, because I can do that. So it's a way forward, stepping backwards. But a girl has to earn a living.
Yeah, of course.
So so as luck would have it, I joined the Andy Ross band again, but this time they were on the road. So we were traveling the UK, doing different things. So I did that, and then I was. By this time, I was a little bit into songwriting myself. I'd got a piano, and so I was starting to do a bit of writing myself. So I was kind of singing in the bands and sort of doing a bit of writing.
Now, I've always been curious. Sorry about people that write songs? Is it just life experiences, or do you just think, right, I'm going to write a song about that? Or is it just completely, I suppose it's a mix and match, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if if there's something that you feel strongly about, then you might want to write about that. You write love songs, all that kind of stuff. There's all sorts of things you can write about, really. Um, and yeah, because I did play guitar, so I'm quite good with chords and stuff. So I started thinking, right, I'm gonna, and of course because of Paul, I watched the way he would write, and so I got a lot of influence from him. And so I learned to sort of play chords and things on the piano, and I loved like chords like major sevenths and beautiful chords. So I started to sort of write songs. So that was again, that was a period of time, probably about 2 or 3 years of of writing songs and singing in bands in the evening. So. And then we go into the 80s, say I'm doing 81, 82, the same thing. I'm doing that. And then, and I did a few other things. I did actually sing, I did some backing vocals for because I used to do sessions as well. But I did a couple of years of doing backing. No, I did some backing vocals for one of the Eurovision songs for Paul back in 1983. I can't remember the name of the band now. Sweet Dreams, they were called. That's it. And so I went to Munich with them for a week. Did that. That was quite interesting. And then in 1983, early 83, I have a call out of the blue, and it's Ian Anthony Stevens who wrote and produced "Searching."
Right. Okay. Yep.
He had tracked me down because he knew my voice. Because unbeknown to me, I had some sort of very popular records on the Northern Soul scene.
Right, okay, yep.
One of them being Our Day Will Come, and another song which Paul wrote called Got You Where I Want You, Babe. And they were quite big on the Northern Soul, but he liked my voice. And he just tracked me down through a publishing company that I was working with at the time. And he said, I've got this song called Searching, and I think... I think you'd like it, or whatever.
Yeah,
I think
you're the one for it.
I think your voice would be good for it. So he just sent me the backing track, and once I'd heard that backing track, there was a voice on there, demoed, and I heard the song, and it was just. I'd never heard anything like it before. It was so fresh at the time, it was so nothing like anything else that was around. And
yeah, kind of a change, like you've seen it, haven't you? The different genres.
Yeah, I just like the sound of it, and I thought, yeah, I like this. It's just so different. And what I liked about it all, the whole track was very uncluttered. It wasn't, you like with all the Gloria Gaynor stuff. It's got all the strings on it, which I do love, by the way. But this was like totally uncluttered, but sounded fantastic. So yeah, I went to so I recorded the track with Ian Anthony Stevens.
So where did you record that?
We recorded it at studio in London, actually, near Euston Station. It was called Scorpio Studios.
Right. Okay.
And we got a deal with a little little independent label called Proto Records, and I could say here the rest is history, but it did originally go out in 1983.
Yes, I see, in the summer,
it was a massive club hit and huge, and I mean I do remember the first time I sang it at Heaven, and because
so you sang that live in 83 at Heaven, did you?
It was to a backing track.
Right, okay.
Well, not even a backing track, actually. It was across the 12-inch, because I'd never done anything like that in my life before, because I'd always sung with live bands. So I didn't have backing tracks in those days.
Suddenly a whole new world.
Oh, it was a whole new world, yeah. And what's really weird about that night is that earlier on in the evening, I'd been working with a band at a hotel in London, another band leader called the Johnny Howard Band, and I'd been working with them, and I'd finished at midnight, as you would, like a dinner and dance type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go off to this place called Heaven. And they were hanging off the ceilings. I mean, it was like, and Searching was at number one in the gay chart at the time. It was already number one even before I'd walked onto the stage. And
wow.
Oh my God, the reception I got when I walked on, I mean, that was it. I fell in love. It was just amazing.
And that was it. Yeah, your love affair. I mean, that must have been amazing because.
It was. It was. Oh, I thought, I like this. I love it. It's fantastic, and that was it, really.
And it did. It was like it became a big anthem, didn't it? Within.
It was huge.
Still is.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, massive. And I really worked that record. I made sure I did every PA I could possibly do all over the world, really, as much as I could, because I wanted people to see the face, behind the song. Because the thing is, with those companies, a lot of the time they would just have someone sing it, and then they'd have someone else front it. I mean, I was even asked if I would sing another song and someone else would front it, and I said, no, I'm not doing that. No, I'm going to front this, and I'm going to get out there, and I'm going to PA it, and I'm going to work it, and I did.
So here's a question: how many times do you reckon you've sung Searching?
I couldn't even begin to tell you. God knows.
Sorry, that random question just come into my head. I thought I'd ask it.
If I could have £1 for every time I've sung it.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
And save that money, I think. Yeah, I'd have a lot of money saved. But I never go anywhere without singing Searching, because I don't think people would like that too much. But
because you did have then a couple of other songs, didn't you? Come after Searching.
Sorry.
I said after Searching, you did have another couple of songs, didn't you, that you released?
Well, when Searching went out in '83 and became a big club hit, but then in 1980, it was 1984. Because as I told you, I'd got into songwriting, and I wrote a song called "Stay in My Life," and I put it in for the Song for Europe, and I got into the last 8 with it. Again,
yeah, amazing.
Yeah, but this time it was one of my own songs.
One that you've written, so that's got to have been just.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So we're looking at 1984.
So quickly on that, the Song for Europe. Where was this one held, and was it live on telly again?
It was on TV, and yes, it was live, but it wasn't as grand. It was in a studio.
Okay.
With a smaller band.
It wasn't still live TV, and
it was still live at that time. But of course now it's all backing track.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that they did go on to backing track, actually. But anyway, I did the Song for Europe, and I was still with Proto Records, and we made the plan. Because what Proto Records had actually done, they deleted Searching, but we're still getting, there was still a lot of sort of interest in that record. And so we decided if I didn't win the Song for Europe, then we would re-release Searching. And
probably a blessing that you didn't win it then.
Well, exactly. So we didn't win, and Searching was re-released, and of course it became a huge hit. So that's how I had.
How did you hear that it made the top 40?
Oh, well, it was.
Just because obviously it's different back then, wasn't it?
My dream had become reality, hadn't it? It was, this is what I'd been sort of working towards, really. So all those years building up and building up and building up. And we are talking sort of a good sort of, 12.
Oh gosh,
12 years or so. So it's what I wanted.
So how did you hear that Searching had got into the top 40? Was it still? I mean, obviously, you got the top 75, top 100, but now they say it's the big top 40.
I was sitting outside the top 40, and I wasn't getting a lot of radio play.
Right.
But then I did a TV show called Checkers Plays Pop.
Yeah, good old Checkers. Yeah, we used to love that.
I went into the top 40 after that, so I started getting the radio play.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
And then when it got into the top 10, was you listening to the charts that day? I mean, did you get told beforehand? Yeah, I mean, how does it work?
No. Well, you get like a midweek chart position, which doesn't mean to say that's what it's going to be, but because it could, you still got a couple of days for more sales, or it might not get sales. So I knew it had a fairly good midweek chart position. So, and that's how you know. And then on the Sunday, you know exactly where it's going to be when you listen to the chart rundown. I always used to listen to it.
So you were sitting there listening to the charts on the radio.
Oh yeah,
and then
I
and you're
always
like,
used to listen to it.
oh, I bet that was amazing.
Yay!
No, I bet because obviously as you're getting closer, you're like, no, not me, and then suddenly,
Yeah, then you start to panic.
Yeah, but then when you're in the top 10, suddenly they're at number 10 and you've not been announced, and you must have known then that you must surely be in the top 10.
Yeah, I was just getting very excited. So yeah, it was great. It was very exciting.
Fabulous. And then you followed that up with another top 10 hit, didn't you?
We followed it up with Whatever I Do, but obviously I didn't record that with Ian Anthony Stevens. That's where I met Pete. Well, again, it's amazing how these things happen, because Pete Waterman was. I'd met Pete Waterman before, because funny enough, he actually put me together with the producer who did the song for Europe. Song with me, Stay in My Life. That's how I met Pete Waterman, through that song.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and
because they were massive, obviously, Stott Aitken and Waterman, wasn't they, as well, in the 80s?
But I bumped into Peter. I was down at Proto Records, and I bumped into Peter. And Searching was sitting at number 6 in the charts, and he said to me, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And I said, "Well, I've got to get I need a follow up. I don't want this just to be a one hit thing." So he literally just started working with Matt and Mike, and he said, "Oh, you should come down to the studio and listen to what we're doing." And they were doing a track when I arrived at the studio, which was the Marquee studio. They were doing the backing track for Divine for Proto Records. I Think You're a Man. So I heard the track. And of course, it was amazing. It sounded stunning. It was just, it was the perfect place it was the perfect way to go. So I just thought, oh my God, this is amazing. Yes, I want to do a track. And of course, I was in a very strong position because I was still in the charts at the time.
Yeah.
So so we so I went home, blah blah blah, and then they sent me a song. But at the time, it was called "Dance Your Love Away," and what it was basically, it was the verse was the verse that is part of the song as you hear now, but it was a different chorus, and I just didn't like the chorus. It didn't. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. So I said, "Well, I like the verse. The verse is fantastic." I said, "But the chorus just doesn't pop out at you." So they went off and they rewrote it and rewrote a new chorus and demoed it again, and they sent it back. And then I heard the chorus that we that you now know and love. So so that's what happened there, and we recorded it really quickly. With an independent label, it was so much easier to do that. You didn't have to go through all the red tape that you would do on a like with majors. So we quickly turned that track around, and it went out, and it was, as Pete Waterman would say, it was flipping over the counter. And it went top 5, and it was their first top 5 single.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So that was the sort of summer of 1984.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
That's how that came about, and then we recorded an album. And then my time with Proto was sort of coming to an end, and then I signed to EMI.
Massive, yep.
Records, yeah. So that's how that all came about. Obviously, throughout all this, I'm sort of traveling and doing shows, all that kind of stuff. So
So you'd have done Top of the Pops as well. How did that come about?
Well, as soon as a record is looking like it's going to go up, that they put you on Top of the Pops. They go by the record.
And that was all live, wasn't it?
Yeah. When you do Top of the Pops, you're going to have a hit on your hands.
Right. Okay.
Because it was such a powerful show, it's massive. Program.
Everyone, I know, I used to watch it weekly, without, because it was absolutely massive back then, especially for our younger listeners who probably don't appreciate, because you didn't have MTV and all these other music channels. It was like Top of the Pops. That was it.
Yeah,
That was when
it was all about Top of the Pops, Radio 1, and and the rundown of the charts and all that kind of stuff. That's what it was all about.
So what was it like being on Top of the Pops? I bet that was a big, massive thrill, wasn't it?
I mean, it was quite weird, because I was talking to someone about this the other day, because you think you'll be there, with everyone sort of, I don't know, going to the bar or whatever, but you don't. It's really weird. I think everyone's so concerned about their performance that everyone, you'd get there, I mean, you'd have your little crew with you, but you'd sort of go off to your room, your little room that you would have, your dressing room, and kind of that was it, really. You'd do your run-throughs, you'd sort of see a few people maybe in the hallway, but I think everyone was quite, I don't know, maybe they were nervous or whatever. I was. So you kind of kept yourself to yourself, really. Some people obviously went up to the bar and what have you. We'd go and have lunch in the canteen and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was kind of weird. But the time, once you'd done the show, and then once you'd finished the show, usually you'd sort of end up in a nice restaurant somewhere with your gang and whoever, and that's when you would sort of relax. But Top of the Pops itself was always quite funny. And I was talking to someone else about it, who'd done it a few times, and they were saying, it was really weird, because I think everyone was so concentrating on what they were doing and singing and their performance. Yeah, funny.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's because, I can see why it was like that. But, you kind of, it was interesting to know what it was like from behind the scenes, because obviously I've sat...
Once you're on the stage and you're singing and doing it, it's great. And you do a great performance, and it's a fantastic... I mean, it was lovely to do. It was always a great show.
Wow.
Always an honour to do it,
And there, on YouTube, if anyone wants to go and have a look.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Okay, I've got to ask you about this as well. They say it's gonna rain.
Yes.
It was #1 in South Africa.
Yes, it was.
Is there a reason? Did you go over there?
Not at the time. I didn't, because of all the political stuff and apartheid and what have you. But I didn't realise what an iconic record it was over there. But I started going over. God, it's back in sort of. Probably sort of 2005-06 period. There was an agent over there who got in contact with me, and I did go over. And the first time I went over, I mean, I was amazed. It was like being back in the 80s again, because people were queuing up down the streets and going crazy when I walked up the road, all that kind of stuff. It was such an iconic record, and even to this day, I mean, I have this whole South African thing is quite amazing, really. I've got a lot of fans, and I've been over there a few times since. So I also went over with Rewind, and we did some big stadiums and that kind of thing. But again, as soon as people hear those drums and what have you, it was a big iconic record.
Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah.
Right, so we're gonna looking through obviously the 80s, and you've got and your songs there, but I look a little bit further on, and because we are running out of time, and you have got 3 songs, and I want you to tell us about all 3 of the songs that you've chosen that you wanted to be played tonight. But you did. Sorry, go on.
Well, were you going to say something else?
Yeah, I was just gonna say about the albums, and that you did. Obviously, your greatest hits is out, which has got some other stuff on it as well.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things.
And your ABBA. So obviously, there's a bit of love for ABBA there.
Oh, I love ABBA. Yeah,
How did that come about?
Well, because I was approached by a record company back in the 90s, 95, and I was asked would I do an album of ABBA songs. I wasn't sure at first, but and I wasn't. They wanted me to work with another producer because by this time also, I forgot to mention, I had actually started doing like production work and with a friend of mine that I've known since 1983 called Peter Ware.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing a lot of stuff together. We were working with some other artists at the time. And so I just said to the chap, who's a big Hazell Dean fan as well, obviously. It was for Carlton Records at the time. And I decided to sort of say to him that, well, yeah, I'd love to do this album, but if I'm going to do it, I want to record it with my partner Pete Ware.
Mm.
I want us to co-produce it, put it together. So I think he was a bit gobsmacked. But I said to him, I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into the studio with Peter, and I'm going to do a version of The Winner Takes It All. I said, and we'll produce it, put it together, and then I'll bring it to you, and see what you think. And that's what I did. I just took that chance, and so I went off. And I have to say, we did a great version of it. Mm. And when I came back, he loved it. He absolutely loved it. So that's how I sort of, because I don't think I would have done it otherwise, because I knew that I wouldn't like working with this other person. Yeah. So that's what I did. I chose all the songs. I do have quite good ideas for sort of, the way I want things to go. I chose the songs, come up with all the sort of different ideas for which direction to go with each song, all that kind of thing. And Peter is a fantastic keyboard player and technical sort of person. So, he sort of, and together we just have always made a really good team. And so we did the ABBA album back in 1995. So, and it was really, it was well received.
Fun. Yeah,
it's a great album. So
ABBA are brilliant, and
it was a labour of love. I mean, it really was. So so that was how the ABBA thing came about back in '95. So yeah.
So we've got a few of your songs. We're going to have to get them on now. So, and we've let you pick the songs that you'd like to play. So I'd like you to introduce this one for us, and then we'll come back and have a quick chat after, and we'll get the next couple played. So the first one that you've picked is "Walk in My Shoes." What's your reasons for picking that one?
Well, it was on the Always album, and it was a song that the A&R chap at EMI Records suggested it to me. I just love the song. I think it's such a powerful song. And we did another mix on it. I just think it's a great song. I would have loved that song to have been a single. And I think it's a song that could have taken me in. There's one or two songs that I believe could have taken me in to maybe another area, lifted my profile a bit more. And I still think that "Walk in My Shoes" could have done that. I think it was a great song.
Right, and we're going to play it right now.
Okay.
Okay, right. So the next song we're going to play that you've chosen is "Better Off Without You." Why did you pick that one?
I picked this song because I sometimes put it in the show, and it's just one of the songs. It's just a song I love to sing, and it's a song that I think, had I have recorded this, because this was recorded in the early 90s, and of course music had changed a lot. The whole Stock Aitken and Waterman thing, it wasn't as big as it was in the 80s at this point, and everyone was worrying where we're going to go from here. But we put this song out. But I always think with this song, if I'd have had this song out in the 80s, I think I would have had a big hit with it. I love it. It's such a good song. It's got a great chorus.
Right, and we're going to hear that one right now. Right, it's been totally fabulous to talk to you. Got a couple more questions, and obviously one more song before we go. So, what's your favourite song of all time? Both either to sing, and it doesn't have to be favourite one to listen to, and you're on a desert island, and you're allowed to take one song with you that you can listen to.
I've got one album for. I've got.
go
If
on.
you could only.
We'll let you have an album.
Oh, go on. Let me have an album. Go on
then. Go on.
So are we doing that one first, or my favourite?
What's the album?
Song?
What's the album?
What? Okay, well, I've thought very carefully about this, and I think the album that I would take would be from an artist called Rumour. Do you know Rumour?
Right, yeah.
Listen to Rumour. She's got a fantastic voice, and the album I would choose would be the Bacharach and David album that she sings the Bacharach and David songs.
Right, on that album, right, okay.
Yeah. It's
Brilliant.
a fantastic album, and the arrangements are fabulous, and her voice, I love her voice, and I love Bacharach and David. So
there you go. So that's the album you take on the desert island. That's brilliant.
Yes.
It's got to be worth listening to. And
it's lovely.
You can only sing one more song. One song. What's it going to be?
So the last song is called Harmony.
Okay.
And Harmony comes off my first album, Heart First, on Proto Records. I chose Harmony because it's such a beautiful song. And, I think I've always enjoyed singing it. I used to put it in the show, and it's one of those songs. A lot of people said, oh, we wish this had been a single. I just think it's a lovely song. And I think it's a song that sort of could mean quite a lot right now in this moment in time in life.
And we are going to finish up with that. Just like to say, what are you up to now, people? You're still out doing stuff, aren't you? And
well, obviously at the moment I haven't. I did 2 shows just before lockdown, and that's been it really. I'm not. I haven't done any shows, so I'm really missing that. But I've done lots of stuff, lots of sort of online stuff and chatting to people like yourself and doing all sorts of stuff like that. So.
We've been totally amazing to everyone here at Trans Radio UK.
Well, thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
We're going to put a big retweet out of your social media so everyone can follow you and see what you're up to and when they can hear you again and what have you not. We're going to finish with Harmony. Thank you so much. You've been totally amazing, and we've really enjoyed having you. Sorry?
Lovely. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Hazell. And we'll get you back on the station again soon, yeah?
Okay, my darling. Take care.
Fabulous. Thanks, Hazell. Cheers.
Have a good weekend. Bye, love.
And here's Harmony.